everybody, and certainly hope that you had some power networking and that you've had some fruitful relations created. And that brings us to our final session of the day. And of course, I'd like to please welcome on stage David Behr and of course Chris Badenhorst, who are going to join, and of course on the all-important topic of security for SMBs. And as we know, this is becoming more and more important every day. And the biggest, of course, target, as we know right now globally, is small business. So you don't have to be a corporate to be affected. You can also be a small business. So it's vitally important, and it's become an increasingly important topic as we go along. So guys, as we enter our final session of the day, a very big welcome, David, a very big welcome, Chris. David is, of course, Liquid Intelligent Technologies CEO of Liquid Cloud and Cybersecurity. And of course, Chris is the strategic lead for Braintree. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mike.
Great. So I'm not going to, as you know, I can't talk much on security, so I'm going to leave you guys to do your thing. And again, please enjoy. And to all our audiences out there, if you've got any comments, pop them into the chat on the right. If you've got any questions for either David or Chris or both, you can pop them into the questions, and enjoy the session. Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, David. Good morning, or let me rather say good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving us your attention and your focus and time for the next 30 to 35 minutes. The topic of our session today, me and David, in preparation of the session, we're trying to take different angles on this, and we thought the most pertinent one was actually the hybrid security. And 3 years back, most of us had the shock of our lives when we walked into the office and our bosses and the owners of our companies told us that empty your drawers, pack your laptop, and you're working from home now because we're closing the offices and we need to work from home. And not many of us had a lot of preparation time for that. It was literally, we were giving like 3 or 4 day notice, and before you knew it, we were sitting at our desks at home, looking at our laptops, looking at the email the whole time. But I think one of the biggest concerns that came out of that, and with us now slowly moving back to work, or adopting a hybrid working model, is how do we keep our users that are working from home safe, and safe from cybersecurity attacks, safe from phishing attacks or spoofing attacks, whatever it may be. So we're going to just talk a little bit about those concerns. And David, Liquid Intelligent Technologies did a research or a paper on cybersecurity a while back. And do you mind taking us through some of those findings that you found from your research?
Great, thanks very much, Chris. I'll do that, and welcome everybody. And I'm very honored to be here talking to you. And I hope really that you'll get something practical and useful out of this session. Cybersecurity is incredibly important to all of us, but more important, I think, in many ways, to small businesses, because small businesses are getting a significant percentage of the attacks that are occurring globally. And small businesses are not always in a strong position in terms of budgeting cybersecurity money and of making sure that they have a strong cybersecurity stance. But it's incredibly important. And I know this session is the last one of the day, so it's always a bit difficult going there. And we'd really welcome, I think, all of you chatting, putting in questions so we can make this as interactive as possible. I've listened to some of the presentations so far. They've been extremely good. I thoroughly enjoyed the Google one with the music intro. I don't think we are quite as snazzy as that, but we'll try and keep it positive and keep it energetic at this time of day. So please do help us out by asking us some great questions. So yeah, Liquid Cybersecurity did a survey of a number of businesses across Africa. We did this in South Africa, we did it in Kenya and Zimbabwe and a few other countries. And you're all very welcome to the full report at the end of the session. I'm going to focus today on South Africa and look at some of the concerns and threats and worries that were kind of given back to us from all of those businesses, as Chris said, as they went to working from home. And of course, working from home has now migrated to a working from anywhere environment. And again, small businesses, because of the nature of their business, are more likely to be working from anywhere. They tend to be, entrepreneurial. They tend to be owner managed as well, and therefore it's very important that they have access to the data in a secure way. And people often ask me, well, why is it important for a small business to worry about cybersecurity? And I think it's really important to remember that you are all part of a much larger supply chain. And very often what's going to happen is you will be the target of an attack in order to penetrate larger supplier contracts that you have. Because the SMBs don't often have the level of security that the larger organizations would have, they become an easier attack vector to get into. Once someone has got into a small business, by the nature of the more trusted relationship they would have with a larger enterprise, they can filter into that larger enterprises, behind the curtain. So it's very important. And I think what we're going to start to see, we see it a lot in more developed countries, and I think it's going to come more and more into South Africa, where to be part of a vendor of a large company, you're going to have to prove that you have a certain amount of cybersecurity awareness, of protection. So it's very important for every business, I think, just to think about how to get started. And I think the big message for me today is make sure you start. There are some very simple ways and relatively inexpensive ways to get going. Don't put this off until tomorrow. Start making yourself more secure today, and Chris will get onto that in a moment. But before we get there, let me talk a little bit about what we found here, because it was quite interesting. 96% of businesses in South Africa that we interviewed are in some way using a cloud service. Now, that's not particularly surprising at all. If anyone's got an email today, it typically tends to be hosted somewhere in the cloud. At this point, when we did the survey, 69% of people were working from home. I imagine that's gone down a little bit, but still a significant number of people have access to the data and are able to work from wherever they are. 79% of businesses had an increase of cybersecurity attacks. Again, I think that is just going to continue to be a trend that we see all over the world. The attacks are becoming more sophisticated. They're becoming more automated. They're becoming more larger scale. They come from everywhere in the world today. And every organization, I'm pleased to see, 90% of them were having a deeper discussion about cybersecurity. And that's obviously very important. The top 3 security concerns that we found, 68% was about managing access to information. As soon as that information is on the cloud, you've got to be very aware of who's accessing it, how they're accessing it, where they're accessing it from. And I think the big trend that you see now is that we've moved away from this idea where all your data is housed in some kind of corporate ring-fenced environment inside a firewall, where you access either when you're on the secure corporate LAN, or if you're going to access it from outside, you're going to do a VPN to the inside, and you're going to start to access that information. Your information now is spread throughout the internet. When you're using cloud services like Microsoft SharePoint, it's in the cloud all the time. So you don't have this notion of a ring-fenced firewall that's kind of protecting all of your data, because your data is everywhere. And the bad guys in the old days would be outside the firewall, and the goodies would be inside the firewall. What happens now is the goodies and the baddies are completely intermingled, because the idea of that ring-fenced firewall has gone away. So a key thing is to think about how you are securing the information that you're storing in a cloud service, and how you manage the identity of the people that are going to be accessing that data. 61% of people are still worried about data loss and recovery. And that is a bit of a bread and butter cybersecurity thing. You've got to be making sure your data is always backed up. Horrific statistics about small businesses and even large businesses that go bankrupt after a period of time of having significant data loss. So again, even if you're not going to go completely bankrupt, any kind of breach, any kind of data loss is going to impact your revenue. And when you're a small business, that can, of course, have a catastrophic effect. And the important thing is to think about these days too, is using something like OneDrive or the Google Drive is not backup. That is sync, that is file sync. If something happens to that file sync, you delete the files, they're going to be deleted everywhere. Yes, I know there's trash cans and there's recovery over a certain period of time, but more importantly, if someone attacks you and encrypts all of your data in a ransomware attack, very most likely all that data you got synced in all your devices equally gets encrypted. So please remember, file sync and file share is not file backup. Very, very key thing to remember in today's world. Also, 51% of you found an issue with finding skilled professionals to help you out. And this is not just a South Africa problem, it's not just an SMB problem, it's a global one. There is enormous gap in the number of cybersecurity professionals that we need across the world and people to fill those roles. So certainly if you're looking to upskill yourself and move into a new career path, I can strongly recommend cybersecurity because it is an area that is having a global significance and global growth. And the salaries are, of course, following that as you go along. So, we've talked now really about some of the key things. And as I said, I'm very happy to share this report with you. You can get a lot more detail about what we've done in it. And I think now that we've talked about some of the concerns, it's probably a good time for me to pass back to Chris with some more sort of practical tips and tricks that you can think of. Although I do see one quick question from Dikabe Lebotsi, and I'm sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, about can you share the cost of being fully secure? And that's a great question. And also it comes back, I think, Chris, jump in here if you like to, what does fully secure mean?
Well,
I think the way to be fully secure is to disconnect your computer from the internet. And you have that air gap, right? There's just no way you can, but of course that would be an incredibly unproductive thing to do. So fully secure is a dynamic thing that's happening all the time. You've got to constantly be updating, upgrading, making sure that you're looking at understanding the new attacks that are going on as well. And equally so, what's the cost of that? It can be, you can do certain things for free. You can do certain things that are included in your existing Office 365, for example. And of course, you can then start to spend additional money outsourcing that. And it's probably a very good time for me to pass to Chris, who can talk about some of the things you can do practically in terms of that today.
Yeah. Well, I think, thanks, David. And just to go back to that question, is there anything out there at the moment that is 100% secure? And I think it's an angled approach to security, and one that I don't think you're ever going to be 100% on. And there's a few aspects of that contribute to that, and a lot of it is a tooling responsibility, David. We're putting in the right tools for your organization. They are not as expensive as you would think they are in the bigger picture. There's a lot of tools out there that are not just, I wouldn't say open source, I wouldn't go for the open source, but in terms of vendor third party. But just to latch on to what David was saying, and what we've seen and out of the report from Liquid as well is that currently 1 in 5 of your organizations, the smaller organizations, 1 in 5 are currently falling victim to some type of cybersecurity attack. Now that attack could be anything from a phishing attack on your email, or it could be a identity spoof, or it could be all the way to the other extreme attacks that you have, which are when your server gets encrypted or your data gets encrypted and you've been hit by some type of ransomware. And it asks the question, and it poses the question is, why are hackers turning their attention to small businesses? And the small businesses, everybody in this forum, they are looking at you. These guys are clever. Some of them are clever. Some of them are not so clever. Some of them are teenagers from Korea or from Thailand, and some of them are really advanced level of attacks. So first of all, why they're looking at your organization or your business in particular is because of, number one, unsecure devices. So we talk about devices. There's a myriad of devices. You typically have your iPhone or your Android device, or a laptop that is on your PC, or you do your Windows and your email on. But a lot of customers are also, a lot of organizations are also letting users bring their own devices into their organizations, and the organizations and those devices are not necessarily secured with the latest updates, and they're not necessarily secured from a potential point of view. And these devices are being plugged into your organization. So and it's giving these hackers, either by smartphone, access to your network, because the devices haven't been updated with security or whatever it may be. But that's an entry point, and why hackers are looking at smaller organizations, because they know in a lot of the context in the organizations that a lot of those devices will not be secured, right? Then, just also the value of your data and the value of the personal data that is residing in your organization. So everybody in this forum or session today, you have got customer records inside of your organization, and you have lots of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have customers, right? So, and that the hackers and these guys are looking at gaining access to that information, and they value that information very highly, because they use that information not just of the theft of personal data, but to use that data fraudulently in other type of fraudulent transactions. You have a treasure trove that these guys are looking for in your organization. They want that data, and they want to make the most of that data in your organization. So the personal data primarily is used, as I said, for identity theft, impersonating somebody, so creating a false bank account. And we know with FICA and these things, this is not as easy as it used to be, but it's still happening off the basis of data theft. To a large extent, the message that I want just to say here is that you've got valuable data that you want to protect, and with the advent of POPIA, you want to do everything you possibly can to answer that question from a POPIA compliance perspective. What are you doing to protect that data of your customers? So I guess that's just a big takeout of that particular one. So I just also, just why are these guys looking at your organization? And it simply is because many of the smaller organizations just don't have the resources to maintain cybersecurity protocols, policies, procedures, whatever it may be. You might just not financially, and as I mentioned that on the answer to that question just now, it's not that expensive to get a simple plan in place and to progress and improve your security posture and protection mechanisms. But more on that, the perception of that is that, they know that you might only have one IT guy that's looking after your security, and he's not just looking after your security, he's also looking after your servers and your network and your firewalls and everything together, and he's probably overburdened, It also speaks, David, to what you said earlier. There's a lack of skills, of security skills in the country at the moment. If you want to pursue a new career path, this is one of those that you probably want to be looking at. And then lastly, just why hackers are looking at SMEs as a target. It's mostly because of legacy software. Operating systems, not just on servers but on laptops and the likes, are busy running out of support. Those out of support operating systems or software is they're not being updated by Microsoft or Linux anymore, and which means that the holes that have been identified in that aren't being fixed. So just to wrap up the slide, David.
On that one, if I may, because that's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's not just also unupdated software, but sometimes because of the financial pressures that small businesses are under, you will find that they're using pirated software as well, sometimes, or unlicensed software. And that, even if that's up to date,
yes,
that itself is a huge hole, because you don't get the automatic updates you need.
Absolutely. And to add to that point, very, very important is the use of open source software. It's considered free, but it hasn't got all the security updates, and it's given to you on a end user license agreement that you accept that this is you take full responsibility for that software. So just to latch onto what you're saying, open source software as well. We're going to test a few questions here, David, before we move
Yeah,
on.
let's I want to start with Alicia, because she started off asking who's been attacked, who's been affected by a breach of security, and I didn't make this up. I think wiser people than I have said it.
Yeah.
But there's two types of people, or two types of businesses: those that have been attacked or hacked, and those that just don't know that they've been hacked. And I think the very interesting thing to note there is that very often attackers will get into your system days, I think on average, it's something like 100 days before they carry out their attack. So they're inside your systems, they're inside your data, they've compromised a user, they are very quietly and very slowly expanding their visibility, what you would call the blast radius of those environments that they've actually managed to attack. Because a lot of the systems that we have that trigger, notice that there's been an attack, is when something significant happens, a bunch of things happen at once. But if they go very, very slowly and slowly compromise more and more accounts, leaving things looking more or less like they're working fine, they can be in there for 6 months very often before they make their final attack and completely nail you. So people who think they have not been breached yet are quite likely to have been. And I found a very interesting statistic from CNBC, actually a pair of them, where they said that nearly 60% of small business owners are confident that they can resolve a cybersecurity attack. So 60% of SMBs are confident they can resolve the attack. Also from CNBC, 42% of small business owners have no cybersecurity attack response plan. So 42% don't have a plan, but 60% of small businesses believe they can deal with a cybersecurity incident. So I'm assuming, therefore, the 60% that do have a plan are 100% confident they can deal with it. And I think that is perhaps an over exuberance of the ability to deal with it by anybody, not just small businesses. And I think that's the importance, Chris, of companies like ours that come in and help small businesses solve these dilemmas. Because you're not, as a small business, you are not an expert in cybersecurity or in cloud, and nor should you be focused on that. And I think that's the importance of managed security providers, SOC as a service, where you can outsource, again, for different degrees of money and involvement, but just get some help from the experts, because it's not an area that you need to be focused on. But as you said earlier, Chris, with things like Poppy, if you get an attack, you can actually get significant fines from the government. And therefore, again, it's cybersecurity, almost like an insurance policy, right? Is that nobody likes to pay insurance until it's too late. And really doing a little bit of work you can do upfront to fund a cybersecurity budget in your organization is going to pay dividends as an insurance policy when something actually happens.
Absolutely, and it latches on to one of the the focus priorities. You as an organization, you may have the skill, you may not have the skill, but I think the question that you need to be asking yourself is, how do we keep up with these guys? How do you keep up with the latest, greatest 0-day attack that your antivirus software might not be aware of? And you hit the nail on the head by saying, David, just partner up with a managed IT service provider or a security services provider that can help you secure your business and your network from a cybersecurity perspective. Go ask for help from your nearest partner. Reach out from our perspective. Reach out to Microsoft to get involved with a Microsoft partner that understands security and understands the tooling to get you secure. And I just want to go back to that question that was posed earlier. Is there are ways to get a security score, and very, very quickly. And I will show a little bit of that from a Microsoft product perspective. I'm not pushing product today, but I'm just going to give you some short or hacks, tips to get to a secure score quickly, to know what your security posture is and the likes. So yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. But just before we jump to that, maybe I just want to comment on what Terence and Behr has said. By open source, do we mean Linux, and is it to be trusted, relied on? I think open source is fantastic. It is a great business model. It is something that's been going for many, many years. It most certainly is trusted and reliable, because in many ways the code is more visible. But I think the point you were making, Chris, I believe, is that just because it's open source doesn't mean you don't have to also work at making sure it's secure as well.
Absolutely, yes. And it's just make sure that there's some type of certification or a warranty behind the open source. It's not always free, but just make sure that there's some type of security behind that, So yeah.
And the model that you have, there's a lot of providers are helping provide that support on top of the open source software. So your software component itself will be free, but feel free to, you should be getting some additional support there to help you as well, just like any software that you would be happening. Antiviruses, that was a very good question. Do they still work on laptops, Chris? And does that give you any security, or are they now obsolete?
Yes. Of course, I mean, of course. Antivirus still works. You would, if you didn't have it on your laptop, I would give it less than 24 hours for you to have some type of malware installed on your laptop, whether you accessing secure sites or whatever it might be. Antivirus is key, but there's a few facets on the endpoint that need to be taken into consideration, especially in organizations. So number one, if you got antivirus installed on your laptop, have you got baseline configuration set up on your domain controllers? Are you running domain? Have you got heuristic tooling set up? And we can go through a lot of that. But just to answer the question in a shorter way, yes, antivirus is still very, 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 very pertinent and effective in blocking attacks.
Absolutely. Sure. And of course it's evolved, as you said, Chris. It's evolved to making sure that URLs that you click on are clean. It's looking at phishing attacks. There's a lot more, as you can, this is a cat and mouse game, right? It's constantly evolving. You constantly have to keep up. And absolutely, antivirus is something that is actually not even baseline. It is just table stakes. You wouldn't honestly run a computer today, or shouldn't be, without antivirus, and one that is regularly updated, because it is most certainly going to be an issue. And maybe what I'd like to touch on now is just to talk about, well, what is the most likely attack vector? And I think this is still email. Email is still the most common way that someone's going to get into your organization. So protecting your email, and antivirus comes with this as well, but so does a lot of work is done in the cloud on your email in terms of scanning those emails before they come in, checking out the links. And there's a lot of software today that does that. Some of it is built into what you buy from someone like a Microsoft. Some of it is add-on, but email is most certainly still your biggest attack vector of how someone's going to get in. So, and Reddit, by the way, relatively low. Again, if you're looking for the best bang for your buck, I would say protecting your email is certainly one of the best ways that you can start to protect yourself.
Good. Yeah. So email, I can't agree more with that. And so identity theft, fraud to a large extent, spoofing, phishing, it's all based on email. And putting a proper email protection mechanism in place, whether it be a Mimecast or a Synac or a Microsoft email protection, advanced threat protection in place, is top priority for your business. And it's gonna filter the majority of these attacks, and because it's heuristic. And what I mean by heuristic, everyone, is that these tools, these email prevention and filtering tools, plug into a greater network. From a Microsoft perspective, the tools plug into the security graph, which is a global graph of incidents that it monitors the whole time, and it keeps your endpoint up to date with all of that information that's happening in the world, so that if a 0-day comes in, the global network is known about it, and it stops that email, or it stops that phish or that spoof. But I guess also, what we talk a lot about this, but David, what are the top priorities, in terms of you should focus on, because it's all out there, and we've spoken a lot about how many businesses have been secured, but what can you actually do to implement that, And so I've just jotted down. Yeah, go for it.
No,
Yeah.
carry on.
So, from our perspective, and what we see with customers at the moment, a large portion is that you don't know what you don't know. I can't put it simpler than that. If you do not know that, David was speaking about that earlier on, that they've been in there for 3 months already, and you don't know that, and they launch their attack. You don't know that if you haven't got a tool or something that's telling you what your security score is. So, number one, David, I would implore the audience here to get to know what your security posture is. And there's various mechanisms that I can also talk about how to go about doing that. But find a way, find a partner, find a tool. If you've got existing 365 or Microsoft 365, I can guide you on how to go look for that. But get to know your security posture.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key point, Chris. And again, knowing where you are, it's baselining, right? It's starting today. Don't be embarrassed if you've got nothing. You'd be surprised how many businesses today have got 0. Yes, everyone's got antivirus, but it's not by and large it's going to come with your operating system, or it's going to come with your computer you bought. And there's some free ones out there too. But just knowing, don't be worried that you haven't got a handle on this. Just do something today. And I think one of the things you got on here is a multi-factor authentication. Pretty much every cloud service today that I know of has got some form of multi-factor authentication. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to go to the full Microsoft AAD, Azure Active Directory, and run centralized, IAM, identity and access management for everybody. You don't have to go all that way on day one, but just make sure whatever logins you have, you've enabled multi-factor authentication. This is for your personal life too. Your bank accounts, when you want to access your bank accounts, please have MFA turned on. That's when you get an SMS and a code to put in, because it means that you've got you as well. So please do that, and please also use a password manager. There are free ones out there as well. Don't use the same password on every single website. Please, a different website, a different password. Just doing those two things, and therefore using a password manager to remember it. And by the way, password managers are built into pretty much every web browser today. So there's no reason, please, to reuse passwords, to use simple passwords, not to have MFA on. That is, even from a personal perspective, make sure you do that, and you'll have a huge upgrade to where you are today if you're not doing it.
I can't emphasize what you've just said there. Multi-factor authentication, or what we call MFA. Every customer at the moment that I am engaging with, my first question is multi-factor authentication implemented in your organization? If the answer is no, when are you going to do it? When are you going to implement it?
Should be, are you going to do it? Are you going to do it this afternoon, or are you going to do it this evening?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm going to phone tomorrow to find out if you've done that or not.
Exactly.
And the reason why I emphasize the reason why I emphasize the importance of implementing MFA is it is a second level of authentication for your organization, Office 365, your Exchange, whatever it may be, to know that it is indeed you. Because we spoke a lot about identity theft, and David, you can go onto the dark web now and you can go buy 10,000 or 20,000 usernames and passwords, just like that. It costs maybe £5 or £10 if you're in the UK, or 100 or 150 Rand. You get 20,000 usernames and passwords and start circulating through them. How would the system know that it's not you trying to log in, unless it's going to send you an SMS, a one-time PIN, or maybe using an authenticator app on your mobile device? How is that system going to know it's not you that's trying to get in? And that's what multi-factor authentication effectively is, just putting in place for everyone to just that second, is this really you that's trying to get into the door? Yes, it's me. Okay, great. Access granted, So yeah. Right. Just moving on, so we've spoken about a lot about getting to know your security posture, end user multi-factor authentication, but end user training and awareness. I cannot, and David, I know you are with me on this. Educating your organization, educating your end users, if they're in finance or if they're in a call center, get them to get on training and awareness of cybersecurity. How to identify an email that does not look legitimately correct. Is somebody trying to pose as your CEO and asking you to change your bank account? I mean, that's a common sense one, but they're getting a lot more clever these days. So I can't emphasize how important it is for your end users, the users sitting at home answering emails, to be able to identify an email that is not necessarily legitimate. Besides the tools being in place like a Mimecast or Microsoft Endpoint ATP, but train your users to identify dodgy or non-legitimate looking emails, and
we always say, we talk about antivirus operating systems, update them, update the firmware of your routers, and it's relatively easy to update your operating system and your firmware and your software. You can't update your staff in the same manner, but your staff,
correct,
your employees can actually become your own firewall, and they can become a very strong firewall if you give them that awareness training, so they understand what they should do in terms of links and clicking and being careful, what to look at on a website to see if it's actually being secured with a certificate. Is the certificate valid? Check the URL? Does the URL look good? A lot of these phishing attacks, you click on a link. If you don't notice the URL itself, it's going to look like a legitimate Microsoft or Google login. It's incredibly sophisticated. And very often, again, because they've attacked one of your other users in your organization, the email you get will be from a trusted person. Could easily be. It could be from a trusted partner, because they've already attacked that, or they spoofed the email itself to look like, as you said, Chris, has come from your CEO. And in terms of, have we noticed attacks ourselves where Liquid has gotten, very close to being duped, is where a vendor of ours emails us and says, hey, we've got a new bank account. Your next payment, please, can you pay this new bank account? And it's a genuine email from that organization. They don't know it's been sent. Simple rule we have in our finance team is you pick up the phone, you call that organization, you speak to somebody you know and recognize, and you say, hey, has your bank account just changed? And get some kind of verification of that, because we've been awfully close to sending money to a hacker because they've infiltrated that small business that's a supplier of ours. So it's that kind of awareness training that is absolutely essential for people to do.
100%. And so I can't agree more. But in closing, David, I just want to finish off. I will send out the deck. I believe that the remaining slides, I see we've got 5 minutes left in the session, so I'd just like to keep that open to get to the answers. I will be sending out the presentation via Leanne and them, so that will be available. But before we close off the session and get to the Q&A, the last thing I just want to address is the last point there on the slide, and that's vulnerability assessments. So do yourself a favor and get in contact with Microsoft, your local Microsoft partner, or Braintree in that, because Microsoft are currently running a few fully funded assessments that you can, as a Microsoft customer or potential Microsoft customer, make use of that initiative that Microsoft are putting out there. They can give you a CSAT assessment, and that CSAT assessment can show you all the things that you don't know, and bring them up to a highlight and give you a security roadmap and a security path to go out to, or come chat to me. I'll guide you in the right direction to get those vulnerability assessments done in your infrastructure. I implore you, make use of it. It's not going to be there forever. And that is me in closing as well. David, anything more from your side?
No, Chris, the time's actually flown. You're right. I was expecting to have a little bit more time, but I hope it's been beneficial to people. I hope there's a couple of practical things that you can all do from here. And yeah, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks very much, Chris, and to everyone on the call.
Great. I just want to make sure that we've answered all the questions. Who will be implementing? We have definitely, David. At Chris Badenhorst, can you please unpack on the side of antivirus and details and recommendations of antivirus best for SMBs and personal laptops? Because what I suggest you do, go type in top 5 antivirus for SME in Google. You'll probably find 5: Kaspersky, Bitdefender, and 3 others. Microsoft are also in the mix there with the Defender. That's going to give you your best results specific for personal use. Yeah. Is there any other questions? Does your business do cybersecurity work for video streaming business? That's a question to you, David.
Yeah, we certainly do, and I'm sure you do too, Chris. We are very happy to help all businesses that are legal ones.
Okay, good. All right. I'll put my email address in here as well if you need to. Great. That's it, Leanne, I think.
Okay, wonderful. A big thank you to you, David and Chris. That was incredibly insightful. I have made some notes along the way as well about where I need to go do things today, this afternoon. One being making sure I update my passwords on many places. Thank you. The information was both terrifying and really practical and helpful. I think most of our small businesses out there have really benefited from your knowledge. And like you said, time just flew. It is really interesting and very well put together. Thank you to both of you. If there are any more questions, pop them into the chat. Otherwise, now, okay, there, great. A nice round of applause from everyone there. And now we go into just the last few minutes on our floor plan. Our event will close at 2:00 today. So if you want to touch base with anyone on the floor plan, you're very welcome. Tomorrow is our final day of the business show, and it is Small Business Friday, the biggest small business day of the year. So make sure you download your supporter pack and get on social media tomorrow. Speak to your family, speak to your friends, invite your clients to participate. We want to just absolutely color social media with messages of support for small businesses. And that's it. Thank you to both of you. And we'll see the rest of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice one.
Bye-bye.